Hello, everybody. Welcome to session 13 of the MREA Mastermind Book Club. Today, we're going over Receive a Million, pages 263 through page 285. 263 to 285, we've got, as usual, a lot to dive into. So I'm going to trust you're going to get your MREA book out. You're going to get out a pen and a highlighter, and let's dive into this section together. Now, as you know, last session, we talked about your money and you, and we talked about getting to the point where the business grosses $1 million. Now we're talking about specifically receiving $1 million. And this is really a fun chapter. Now, he references a couple other books in this section, so I'm just going to get that out of the way now. He references The E-Myth. So if you don't have a copy of this by Michael Gerber, you should get one. It is a fantastic book, as you can tell. I've read it just a few times. It's a great one. Another book he references is The Cashflow Quadrant, as well as Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. So another one that I've spent quite a bit of time in, as I trust most of you have as well. So he references both of these books. I want to make sure that you guys have those or get those if you don't yet, because some of the concepts he talks about he's taking or borrowing from those authors. So let's look at page 264. Now in figure 2, he gives us a figure for what he's talking about just above that. Just above that in that first full paragraph, he says there are broadly only two routes to acquiring money and financial wealth. You can either earn it or you can receive it. Now, sounds small, it plays big. There's a big distinction here, so stick with him here. He keeps going here. He says, and although there are multiple paths to earning and receiving, you can still divide them into two neat categories. Either you work for your money or your money works for you. Now, this is a huge concept. Maybe some of you teach this and you already have it down. I trust there's other people watching this video that have not wrapped their heads around this concept yet. And I remember years ago when I first read this, I didn't understand the concept. I didn't grow up with in a house or in a family that taught me a lot about this stuff. And so reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, reading Cashflow Quadrant, it opened my mind to a whole different way of thinking and looking at money, okay? And that's what he's getting at here. He's challenging all of us to look at money differently. Either we work for our money or our money works for us. And what we know is, of course, wealth is only created when our money is working for us, when it's not dependent upon us working for it. Now he goes on to say, right there in that paragraph, it is the difference between active and passive income. Active is where you work for your sales business, and passive is where your sales business works for you. So that's what he's talking about in this, when we hear the term seventh level business or the path to the 7 levels. We're going to talk about that in this section, but it's a buzzword you hear a lot of people who are building their business based on the models of this book. What he's talking about is building it to a level where the business works for you and it's not dependent upon you working for it. All right, so this is the chasm we're going to bridge today. That's the section of this book is talking about how do you get from working in the business to working on it. Now, figure 2 outlines that really, really well, gives you a visual for you visual learners. But let's keep going. On page 265 at the top, he says this, for example, if we assume a conservative 5% rate of return on your savings, you need $100,000 in the bank to earn $5,000 per year in passive income. So what he's saying is if you're only going to get 5% interest, which in today's day and age, that's really pretty generous. But if you're going to get 5% interest return on your money, you'd have to have $100,000 in the bank to get $5,000 in income a year off of the money you invested. Now he goes on, he says to save that much, because we can either get it completely passively or we can save it over time. To save that much, you'd actually have to earn and not spend. There's the key, notice that in the brackets, a total of $149,253, which when you take out taxes, 33% is his estimate here, amounts to $100,000 in the bank. Even a disciplined agent who sets aside $10,000 a year before taxes would still have to wait 15 years to amass $100,000 in total after-tax savings, right? So again, what we're saying here is he's establishing the importance and the weight of what true passive income is, what it can do for you, and how it is really the gateway to you creating wealth. Now, in this section, he's also talking about how the real estate sales business and building a real estate sales organization is one of the fastest paths to do just that. It's absolutely one of the fastest paths. Now, look at page 266. He goes on. Middle of the second paragraph on that page, he says, in fact, we believe that turning your self-employed real estate sales job, because that's where everyone starts, but turning that sales job, self-employed, into a business is the most straightforward path you can take to building financial wealth and passive income. So he's answering the why. Why does this matter? Why do we worry about this? He's telling you right now. You're building something not just for today, but you're building something that over time creates true passive income for you to where you can work on it and receive income without having to work in it. It's not built on you and what you can do inside of the business. You're building it through others. You're succeeding through others. Now, he starts really breaking this down. And if you can look, 266, working on the business instead of in the business. Now, this distinction is really, really big. This is also one of the areas that a lot of agents get hung up on. So I want to spend some time here because this is a really, really big point, guys. You understand this, you understand a lot. And this concept specifically, and he mentions it, but it comes from the E-Myth. So again, another reason to get that book. Here's what he says, 266 under the working on the business instead of in the business heading. For you to receive, in quotes, $1 million a year from your business without having a job in the business, two things must happen. First, number one, you must gross a lot more than $1 million a year. Underline a lot more. One of the biggest mistakes I've seen and had conversations with, and I see a lot of people make, is they think to net $1 million, we can gross just barely over $1 million. What we forget is when a business is that size, we're going to have big expenses. Even when we're playing red light, green light, even when we're watching our P&L, even when we're sticking to our budget, you're naturally going to have a fair amount of expenses for a business that size. And so what he's saying is here, you have to gross a lot more than $1 million because we have to gross more than our expenses in order to net, right? I know you know this, but it's amazing how many people miss that. Number two, you must hire someone who can run the business at the level you did. You have to find somebody and hire somebody that can run the business at the level you did. Now, point of distinction. It doesn't mean they're going to do it the exact same way you did. And if they don't do it the exact same way you did, it doesn't make them wrong or you right. What he's saying is you need to find somebody who can run the business at the level you did, the level of accountability, a level of efficiency. It doesn't mean there's not going to be challenges. It doesn't mean there's not going to be problems. And it doesn't mean they're not going to work in some of their own ideas. But as long as it's staying true to who your business is, the core of your business, which we'll talk about later in this book, in this chapter, as long as that is staying in alignment, the how is really irrelevant in a lot of cases. Look at page 267. Second paragraph on that page. He says, before I can introduce you to the 4 issues of Receive $1 Million, because they've boiled it down to 4 main issues that stand in the way of you and I going from where we are to the Receive $1 Million mark. He says, before I can introduce you to those, I need to point out that as a business owner, you'll be challenged to work on your business instead of working in it. You're going to have to work on it instead of in it. He goes on to say, as Michael Gerber explains in his book, E-Myth, working in the business is when you're doing the actual day-to-day work of the business. Think of it this way. Working in the business, if you don't show up and you're working in the business suffers because something's not getting done. A key function and duty inside of your organization is not getting done. If you are in the in stage, working in the business, if you don't show up, the business suffers. The business feels it. It notices. Now, contrary to that, he says this, working on the business is when you're doing the work of planning and building the business. So when you're working on the business, if you don't show up for a day, your business doesn't necessarily feel it. It doesn't impact a lot of people, and it doesn't mean that much isn't getting done because you're not actively working in the business. You're working on it. You're thinking vision, big picture, planning, strategic stuff. You're looking around the business and looking ahead of it, not worried about the day-to-day in it. So that's the distinction, in and on. Big, big distinction. Don't miss that. Now, at the bottom of 267, he gives a really great figure, figure 5. And I've taught this before across the country. If you look on the right side, I love this distinction. Essentially, what he's saying is it works like this. When you're an agent, right here, when you're an agent, it's I do it, right? And as a single agent, like Gary has said earlier in this book, if you don't have a maid, you are one. So when you're an agent, when you're a solo agent, you're just getting started. It's an I do it phase. That's the life you live. It needs to get done. I do it. Now, the next step in that journey, the next step as working from getting to work in the business to eventually working on the business, the next step is being a manager. And you can see the heading under that one. It says, we do it. So to get from I do it to we do it, I have to build a business big enough that generates enough revenue that provides me the resources to go hire talented people that I can then bring into the organization, hold accountable, train, consult, and manage running my business. That's we do it. I'm still collaborating. I'm still working in the business. The manager is still very much in the business position. Now, the third phase, this is where everyone's ultimately probably wanting to get to. That's being an owner. And you look at the heading under that one and it says, others do it. So we're going from I do it to we do it to others do it. Or like I've heard it taught before, I do it, we do it, they do it. Ultimately, you don't get to skip from I do it to they do it. And that's what a lot of people do. A lot of people think they can come in, hire a right person, give them the keys and say, good luck, and go check out. We're going to talk about that. It's extremely problematic, and it has not worked out well for most people who have gone that route. Now, look at page 268. He starts breaking down the actual 4 issues of Receive a Million. So we're going to touch on these fairly in depth because this is really worth spending some time on. Now, here's what he says, and here's why this is relevant and valid. He says, from our experience working with and interviewing top agents around the country, we've managed to isolate 4 issues that make the difference when you're jumping from business owner to receive a million. These 4 issues can be summarized as follows, and we're going to outline them here, and then we'll dive deep into each. Number 1 is active versus passive income. Number 2, the opportunity of the 7th level. Now we're on page 269. Number 3, the 3 key hires of the millionaire business. And number 4, your role and responsibilities. Now, let's dive into the first one. On 269, middle of the page, he goes straight into active versus passive income. Now, I have this first paragraph highlighted, and I want to dive in here a little bit with you guys, so read with me. Active income, where you work for your money, and passive income, where your money works for you, actually represent opposite ends of the spectrum. Underline the opposite ends of the spectrum. This is a really important distinction. They represent opposite ends of the spectrum. On one side, you have a job, and you are paid directly for the work you do. You're working in the business. On the other end is ownership income, sometimes called mailbox money, where money comes to you from your business or investment. But here's the rub. Please underline, circle, star, highlight. I don't care what you have to do, but this should be dog-eared. This sentence should stand out when you're rereading this book. Here's the rub. Underline what comes next. As passive as it may appear, even mailbox money requires your, underline, active involvement. As passive as it seems, it still requires your active involvement. Now, why would he say that? We're going to talk more about this, but guys, I've seen this firsthand. I've watched a lot of friends fall victim to this. And they think whether it's owning a market center or a real estate office, whether it's owning a team, doesn't matter what it is. However, I've seen a lot of people make the exact same mistake, thinking that when they get to this level and they get to work on the business, that working on the business and having passive income means they can go sit on a beach or go pursue something completely different and never even think about the other business again. And unfortunately, that story ends the same way each time. You still are required to be an active participant in your business, even when you get to the 7th level. The difference is what you're actively involved in. And we're going to talk about that. Look at the bottom of 269. Likewise, business ownership still requires your attention and involvement, just on a smaller scale and in a different way. The truth is, and we're going to 270, unless you are the beneficiary of a trust fund, there is actually no such thing in a practical sense as completely passive income. What he's saying is here, there's no free lunch. There's no free lunch. There's no such thing as completely passive income. At some point, you will still be involved. Important distinction. Now, he goes on, gives us an exercise here that I think is really, really interesting. And if it's me and I'm you, I would do this every single year, maybe a couple times a year, but at a minimum once per year. And I'm going to log this in my journal so that I can look back and see the progression. Page 270, dollars per hour. Here's the exercise he gives us that I think is so cool. There's an interesting economic concept that might help you get a better grasp on just how passive your income really is. Because we all know people that brag about how they have this passive income. If they took this test, you might actually have more true passive income than they do. So follow with me here. He says it's called dollars per hour. Basically, if you take your net income, not your gross, your net income, number 1 point of distinction for this exercise, net income, not gross. Most real estate agents want to brag about their gross income. Gross income is irrelevant in the scheme of things. Because I know a lot of agents, as we've talked in previous videos, there are a ton of agents who gross a ton of money and they net nothing. They gross a ton of money. They have a really expensive hobby because they're grossing a ton of money and they have nothing to show for it. Now, that's not why you got into this, and that's not why I got into this. So that's not what we want. But important distinction here, for this exercise, you're going to take your net income and divide it by the hours you spend earning it. You can measure your progress toward higher levels of business and passive income with this exercise. So you're going to take your net income, not gross, your net income, have I said that enough times? Your net income and divide it by the hours required to make that net income, and you're going to log that dollar per hour number. Now, over time, you should see, as you're growing your business, you're leveraging out tasks, you're bringing on talent, as you're going through the growth phases of your business, you should see that number rise because your hours invested and time required to work in and on the business should go down, okay? So it's a great exercise to really track, am I really moving forward to where I want to go? Am I creating a business that's creating a higher per hour net passive income worth to me, myself and me? Because that's the whole idea. That's why we're doing it. Yes, we want to help other people. Yes, we want to help a lot of clients and consumers. Like, yes, 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 all that stuff, 100%. And ultimately, if you're not at some level also wanting to build something that creates passive, true passive income for you, then this is a really interesting hobby and experiment for you. And I don't believe that's any of the case. So you have to inspect what you expect, and that's a great exercise to track your progress towards what you expect. Look at page 271. He talks about connect versus disconnect. Now, this is big, so I have a lot of highlights here, so read with me. Under connect versus disconnect, page 271. So be wary of how you view passive income, your business passive income. It's not so much passive as it is highly leveraged. That's a great sentence to underline. It's not so much passive as it is highly leveraged, because he's saying you're still involved. As a business owner, your active participation will still be required. However, the nature of that involvement will be dramatically different from when you held a, quote, job in the business. You get to do more of what you're probably good at, probably more of what you enjoy doing. You get to do more of that as the business grows and you replace yourself in the jobs of the organization. However, you never graduate from actually being a part of the organization. Now, he goes on to say this, but your role is active, not passive. Unfortunately, many people don't get this subtlety and take the position that business ownership frees them to devote all their attention elsewhere. They mistake business passive income for pure passive income. As a result, their businesses often suffer from that neglect. Here's an interesting business point you must not miss. Might mean underline this next section. Active is active and passive is active. No, that's not a typo. You read that correctly. Active is active and passive is active in business. They're both active. In business, active is working in the business and passive active is working on the business. Be warned, absentee ownership usually equals business demise. Owners who wish to be absent, to have no active role, should simply sell. There's no such thing as completely passive income. You never get to fully graduate from having an interest and involvement in your organization. Now, page 273. A great chart, figure 6, a great chart where he actually outlines the path to the 7 levels. So we've talked about this. We start here as an agent when we don't have anybody else, and we work our way through. Now, I love this page. It's probably one of the most utilized pages I use when coaching agents and teams, because we use it to cast a vision and we look, what's the roadmap and the path likely going to be when we're following models, tried and true models, i.e. this book. When we're following tried and true models, what is the path I'm going to need to go down look like? And the beautiful part about it is when we follow the model, we know exactly who we're hiring next, what type of talent we're looking for next, when we likely can hire that person next, and ultimately how long it likely should take us based on where we're at today and where we want to be someday. It allows us to navigate that, have an idea of when we're going to get to the destination, and know who we need to hire along the way. This is brilliant, guys. And what's amazing to me is, as brilliant as this is, people still, like the beginning of the book, try to put creativity before models. So many people I've coached think they know better than this. And don't forget, this is a culmination of the experience of super top producing agents from across the country. This is not opinion. This is not theory. This is built on experience people have had. And if I'm like you and you're like me, I'd much rather learn from somebody else's pain than have to endure it myself. However, here's what we know. People try to shortcut this. For instance, first level on page 273, first level you can see is just the agent. And I've seen so many people try to skip from maybe level 1 or level 2 and skip straight to level 4. They just want to skip level 3 because I don't need another assistant. I know better than the model. My business is different. And ultimately, it's not. And I can tell you for 14 years, I've watched countless number of businesses collapse right back to where they started because they tried to shortcut the path to the 7th level. Do yourself a favor, trust the process, trust the experience of those that have come before us, and just follow the model. Now, page 274 at the top. If real estate agents do not build their own practice into an asset-based business that can generate business passive income, they'll have to find some other means to take care of their financial needs when they stop listing and selling homes. This one little sentence up top here, this in my mind is the whole reason for this book. It's the whole reason for building a team. Because traditionally, you and I both know when a traditional agent in the past has stopped selling, their income goes away. The day they stop prospecting and selling, they have no more income from real estate. And what he's saying here is building this team, building this business, building something bigger than you that can last longer than you allows you to have retirement income along the way. We aren't subject to the fate of most of the people that have gone before us in the sense that once they stop selling, they stop having income. We have an opportunity to change that. And it starts with building, as he said, an asset-based business. Page 275. Top of 275, the third obstacle towards receive a million is the 3 key hires of Millionaire business. Now, as you can see, there's a lot highlighted here. A lot. And the reason for that is, as Gary has said before in the book, says in this section, and we'll say again, these key hires could be one of the most pivotal parts or success indicators as to whether you're going to get to the 7th level or not. Who you hire, who you surround yourself with is absolutely crucial. So let's just dive in there. At the top of that, page 275, he says, one of the great business truths is that it doesn't take a lot of people to make a lot happen. What he's saying here is when you hire the right people, you don't need an army. You just need a few. Because truly talented people will always accomplish and achieve more than average people. He goes on to say, a sentence down, but in any well-organized company of any size, the leader has only to focus on a few key personnel who make all the rest happen. We call this the 3-foot rule, which demands that we make sure everything within our reach, usually 3 feet, is magnificent. Applying the 3-foot rule to your organization means that the people who report directly to you should also be magnificent. When you surround yourself with capacity talent, then everything else falls into place. If you do not have capacity talent, no amount of work by you is going to salvage it. Now let's unpack that because he said a lot there. First, the 3-foot rule. What he's saying is you as the business owner, you as the rainmaker in this example, you should have no more than 3 to 5 people directly reporting to you. The fewer, the better. No more than 3 to 5 people directly reporting to you. These 3 to 5 people, your key hires, your empire builders, your business is built on these people. And as a result, you want to spend all of your time with those people. Now, those people all have their own 3 to 5 and so on and so forth, but you, as the owner of the business, should have no more than 3 to 5 people directly reporting to you. And he goes on to say, you're probably no more than 3 hires away from being a millionaire real estate agent. Underline that. You're probably no more than 3 hires away from being a millionaire real estate agent. If you look at the organizational model we just looked at on page 197, you'll notice that when completed, there are 3 people at the top. So he's telling you who these 3 people should be. Pay attention. Number 1, the lead listing specialist. Number 2, the marketing and administrative manager who also moves up at the 7th level to become the business manager. And number 3, the lead buyer specialist. Everyone else in the chart reports to one of these 3 people who in turn, at any level below the 7th level, report to you. Those are your 3 key people. Those are the 3 people, when appropriately timed, are the 3 most important hires you can make and have the biggest income at predicting the success of your business. At the top of page 276, he says you should make note that it's not at least 3, it's only 3. The key is to have only these 3 people within your 3 feet and taking your time. Now, everyone else is going to want your time. There are going to be lots of other people competing for that 3-foot circle. And what Gary's saying is they don't get access. They don't get in. Now, 276, he talks about a 5-year commitment. He says when you're looking for these 3 people, it's extremely important that you seek at least a 5-year commitment from them. They need to see the position you're offering them as having serious potential to be their life's work. Now, what does that look like? In my world, that looks like having that candid conversation with them. Because if they can't commit to you to see themselves with you for 5 years, if they can't commit that they're going to be with you a minimum of 5 years, then I don't know if it's worth hiring them. What we're looking for is capacity talent. Out of that section, capacity talent in the sense that Gary's using it means it's talent that can rise to the occasion. Talent that can do more than what's required. Talent that just figures it out and gets it done. Talent that can grow in their position with the organization wherever it wants to go, however big it wants to get. What we know is when we find those people, we need to look for a serious commitment because those people are absolutely worth holding on to, casting a big vision for, and being in business with a long time. Now he goes on at the bottom of 276 to say big goals and a clear understanding of what it takes to achieve them will be the real keys to attracting this kind of talent to your organization. Now, whose responsibility is that? It's yours as the business owner. Big goals and a clear understanding of what it takes to achieve them will be the keys to attracting this kind of talent to your organization. That's your job. You have to have big goals. You have to have a clear understanding of what it's going to take to achieve them, and you have to be able to cast that vision in order to be able to attract this kind of talent. Now, it goes on to say they'll not only pull you through, meaning the big goals, they'll attract key talent to you. Now, page 277, he talks about what does the accountability and the cadence look like, these meetings. And he talks about weekly meetings. He's saying in the middle of 277, under that section of weekly meetings, he says this, these meetings should always start and end with a discussion of your business goals, whether or not the business is on track, and how to get it on track or keep it there. That's the whole point of these meetings. And if those meetings aren't having those conversations, then you're wasting both of your time. Page 278, he talks about hiring. A couple key things in this section. He says, not only is it your responsibility to hire the person who will be managing the day-to-day business, but it will also be your responsibility to oversee and be as involved as necessary in the hiring of the other 2 key personnel. So ultimately, a lot of the hiring will not be done by you. What he's saying here is for those key 3 people, those 3 positions, that hiring needs to be done by you, or at least with you, because those 3 positions are too important to your organization to completely delegate that responsibility. Middle of that section on hiring, he says, in the end, hiring and staying in business with these 3 key people become your total people focus. Now, mind you, we know people are going to come and go. Not a question. What he's saying is you as the business owner, hiring and staying in business with these 3 key people becomes your total people focus. Because when you find those 3 people, replacing them takes a lot of time, takes a lot of money, and a lot of heartache. So when you find them, we have to stay ahead of them. We have to cast big vision. We have to create big goals. We have to make sure they can achieve and accomplish all of their goals within the scope and vision of our business. And as long as we keep that there, as long as we stay ahead of them, as long as we keep growing opportunity for them, they'll stay with us for a lifetime. That's our job as the business owner to make sure that we're continually working on that. Now, page 278 at the bottom, section of your role and responsibilities. He says the role of Millionaire Real Estate Agent in the 7th level business is very clear. So when you get to the 7th level, your role as the MREA agent, he's saying, is very clear. It's the same role that every successful business owner has. And it's one word: accountability. He goes on at the bottom of 278, top of 279. He says you may be able to spend less time on the business when it's achieving goals, but you can never step off the accountability bus. Never. Accountability is both a mindset and a skill set. The mindset is about clarity and setting standards and a tough-minded determination to meeting those standards. The skill set is, on the other hand, about planning and goal setting, and on the other hand, about keeping track and holding others responsible for hitting those goals. He's giving you the pieces you never get to give up. No matter how big your business gets, no matter how well it's operating, no matter how seventh level you get, he's saying you never get to give up those pieces. He goes on to say a few sentences down. As an owner, the role of accountability is focused on 3 key areas: leadership, people, and capital. Now, he breaks those down further in the next couple pages. So let's look at that. Bottom of 279 under leadership accountability. He says, I've come to believe that it is as important as personality, drive, and experience are to leadership. The key lies in bringing 5 things to your venture: mission, vision, values, beliefs, and perspectives. We at Keller Williams know this as the MVVBP. Now, page 280, and this should be dog-eared in your book. It is in mine, but this should absolutely be dog-eared in your book, because one of the questions I get the most is, how do I know what a mission versus a vision versus the value statements are? What do they answer? What questions do they answer? And the beauty of what he's done at the top of page 280 is he's giving you the answers. Mission answers the question of what is our purpose and why are we in business? Our vision answers the question, what does the world look like during and after we've achieved our mission? Values answer the question, what is important to us, what do we value, and what's the why behind our business? Beliefs answer the questions, what are the rules and guidelines we follow as we work together? And perspective answers the question, what's our current situation? What's the reality of where we are right now? So as you're planning, working on your business, you're planning for the coming year, you're planning for the end of the current year, whatever the case may be, your job as the business owner and as a leader is to make sure you always have clarity and you're bringing your MVVBP back into perspective, back into focus, back into the conversation with those inside your organization. Now, he goes into people accountability, page 280 and 281. And on page 281, figure 7 is another great visual cue to be able to understand how these MVVBP, these 5 areas, work together. How do they fit together to make a big impact on your organization? On page 282, the first full paragraph on the page, he says, our experience with accountability has shown that tough love accountability with people who are not true talent eventually leads to a mutual parting of the ways or a reduction in their responsibilities. And then you will need to find a truly great hire to replace them. What he's saying is, you don't get to let up. Gary Keller told Cody Gibson this years ago, and Cody shared it with me. Gary Keller said, I'm loving, my standards are not. I'm loving, my standards are not. My business doesn't have a heart. I do. So I'm loving. I can love you as a person, yet my standards are not loving. So I can love you as a person and get out of business with you because you're not meeting standards and still love you as a person. My business doesn't have a heart. I do. That's where this accountability comes in. What he's saying is, when you have this tough love accountability with somebody who's not true talent, because you understand true talent with tough love accountability is going to lean in and rise up. However, people who aren't true talent in a tough love accountability environment will eventually excuse themselves or be excused by the business owner. Page 283 at the top. Capital accountability. He says this, as the owner of a business, you are responsible for providing the financial resources the business needs to survive and grow. You are also ultimately responsible for ensuring that ongoing obligations are fulfilled, that you pay the bills, and new systems or hires are funded. You invest in growth and improvement. Owners follow their money, evaluate results, and hold their dollars accountable to appropriate results. What he's talking about here, he goes on to say, is play the red light, green light game to make sure you're getting a better than a dollar for dollar return. The only way you know is to inspect it. And the only person who has the skin in the game at the highest level is you, the business owner. That's why this is one of the things you never get to give up inside of the organization. So those are your 4 stumbling blocks, or the 4 areas that could keep you and have kept others from receiving $1 million. I hope that was helpful, guys. Thank you for being on with us today. Next week, we'll go on to session 14, putting it all together, pages 289 through 312. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.